and my fellow Marines had not been willing to make the recommendation and do the testimony necessary to support the recommendation, I would not be honored with this medal. There is very little that we as an individual can do alone. Circumstances, I believe, govern our lives. You cannot anticipate a circumstance. Many of you entered the United States Marine Corps, never dreaming previously that you would ever be in the United States Marine Corps. But there was a circumstance that happened that caused you to want to serve for various reasons. Mainly to protect America and our freedom and way of life. Some of you, no doubt, in your profession, command other individuals. You will experience, perhaps, dramatic happenings that affect your life. What we have been taught and what we have learned is what will prepare us to handle that individual circumstance as it happens. I believe and have said many times, we only know what we are taught. I've never had an original thought in my life. Everything I think of, somebody else has already thought of. The words that I know, somebody else had thought of those words. Oh, we come up with new words. Some I still don't know what they mean, like gigabyte, megabyte. Though that language is not within my mind because I have never been taught those words. But it was a circumstance that put me in war. I knew nothing about war. Had no idea that I would ever be in the military service of any kind. During the years of Depression, we had some people in the armed forces, not a great number, but most of them were there not necessarily to protect America or our freedom. They were there to make a living because there were no jobs. That was a payday in there. Oh, it was $30 a month, but it was a payday. I saw a Marine or two over the period of years from my little community away out in the country. We very seldom ever saw anybody in uniform. But these two individuals at separate times and no acquaintance with each other, they weren't related in any way. But both of them didn't like to coal mine or shovel cow manure. So they went into the military to the Marine Corps to earn a living. And in those days, you got home one time a year. The military would grant the individual 30-day furlough once a year. The Marine Corps, a little different than the other branches, required those individuals to wear their dress blues all the time they were home. Naturally, their civilian clothes had been taken away from them. They didn't have any. So when they came home, they wore their dress blues. Well, I'm an early teenage kid. Well, they looked 9 feet tall and sharp as a tack, and always, that dress blue was perfect.
Yeah.
Because they had a proud heart. They were proud of who they were. They were proud that they were serving. So it was no problem to wear the uniform. Now, I had a couple brothers that were drafted in early 1942. And when they were drafted, they didn't have a choice. They had to go to that other outfit, that army. And they had the ugliest uniform you could imagine. That old wool uniform, you could run over with a steamroller and couldn't get a crease in it. I didn't want to wear that ugly uniform. I wanted to join the United States Marine Corps because I wanted to look like that guy in my mind's eye that always looked neat, very polite. Well, that guy would even open the door for a lady. I mean a car door. Holy cow. Now, if you go around and offer an open car door for a woman, oh, you're in trouble. Circumstance. Had I stopped at a moment in time on February the 23rd, 1945, to evaluate, should I do this? You dummy, you can get yourself killed doing this. Had I stopped to evaluate, I would never have been able to accomplish what I was charged to do, to fulfill my duty and obligation. Because other Marines had taught me what I needed to do and to know in order to complete the job that was before me. Had they not, I couldn't have done it. My training took over. It enabled me to use the skills that I had been taught by other individuals. And without that training, it would have been impossible. Just imagine you're a pilot. You're in an airplane. There's an enemy after you. But all of a sudden, you have that moment when you have to make a decision. Instantaneously. And if you pause, you lose that opportunity, which could cost you your life. That's why it is so important that we have training, that we are taught what we need to know to complete the mission that we're charged with. During my growing up in our family on a dairy farm, We had to milk cows twice a day, the old-fashioned way. I still don't understand why we couldn't have done it one time a day and got it over with. Why did we have to do it at 5 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the evening? I have no understanding of that. But that was our job. So we had to fulfill it. But I was trained to follow orders. My dad very clearly said, I do not want to tell you something the second time. And you only do that one time, and then you wish you hadn't even done it that time. When I went into the Marine Corps, because of that training that I had growing up as a teenager, I didn't question my drill instructor when he told me to give me 10. I didn't say, I don't want to. No way in the world. I did what he told me to do. When I was 17, I was in the great state of Montana. As it showed in that video, I was in the Civilian Conservation Corps. Still having no idea that I'd ever be in the Marine Corps. And that's when Pearl Harbor was bombed. I didn't even know what Pearl Harbor, I never heard of Pearl Harbor. I was so smart, I didn't even know we had a South Pacific Ocean either. The thing that we were told was, America is going to war. And they gave us an option. If you were over 18 years of age, you could sign a piece of paper and go straight into the Army right then. Because every Civilian Conservation Corps base was run by an Army, usually second lieutenant. He had a first sergeant, he had a mess sergeant, he had some clerks in the office. They did all the stuff running the base. But if you were not 18, then you had to have mom or dad's consent. My dad was dead. I knew my mother would not consent as a 17-year-old. So I came home. They sent us, put us on a train, sent us all home, because the Civilian Conservation Corps now is going to be discontinued. There'll be no more. Many of the 265 that we had in that base went straight into the Army. I got home, I wanted to join the Marine Corps. Mom still wouldn't sign my paper. I went to bed one night on October the 1st. And I woke up the next morning on October the 2nd, and I was no longer a boy. Now I'm a man. At 18, I became a man. So now I don't need mom's consent. She wasn't very happy, but I told her I'm going to join the Marine Corps. Two brothers were already in the Army. So I went to town, and I'm 7.5 miles out in the country, and no bus service. You got there the best way you could. Sometimes you walk, and sometimes people come along, pick you up, and give you a ride. But I went to the Marine recruiter and told him I wanted to go to the Marine Corps. He handed me a piece of paper, one sheet. That was the enlistment contract. I filled it out. Main thing on the form was who was to get my $10,000 life insurance in case I got killed. They weren't interested in much anything else, you know. Well, who am I going to pay this $10,000 to in case you don't make it? So I filled it out. Took it back to the recruiter. He didn't really look at it. He just looked at me. Said, I can't take you. I said, why? He said, you're too short. Sure, that makes you feel good. I mean, I was a country boy with muscles. And I thought I could whip anybody in town. And here he turns me down because I'm too short. So I go back to the farm. I had no place else to go. Early the next year, the Marine Corps realized they're going to have an awful lot of people if we're going to win this war. So we better lower this height requirement business so we can take some runts into this thing. So he came and looked me up and asked me if I still wanted to go, and I said yes. And that's the long and short of the story. We went. What we have learned is that, really from others, and as we go through life, we must be aware and choosy, if you will, of our association with others. We are all people that can be influenced. We all know that. Some are stronger than others, and we all know that. But a role model can really change your circumstance. And it happens every day in life with our youth today. It is happening over and over that somebody influences a youth to go down a path that he never dreamed that he would ever go. And it's a wrong path. That's why one of the reasons, at least why our jails are so overcrowded, and we've got so many thousands in our prisons. In all probability, that individual didn't think for himself that he was going to do what he did, but others perhaps had that influence on him that caused him to go. In each case, someone if we go down that right path, sacrificed their life to make that path available to us. Others made it possible for me to be free. I couldn't have done that on my own. So others sacrificed their life so I would be born and have the freedom that I have the minute I drew my first breath. Without those sacrifices, it wouldn't have happened. We couldn't be the country we are. Let me tell you a story, then I'll close this thing out. It's been a long evening, but there was a farm boy from North Carolina